Right, so I see there's a number of people in the room, so I think we are ready to start today. Our wonderful session, our first Africa Rising Music Conference session in collaboration with MTN Bushfire. Firstly, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Sarah Jane Nicholson, and I'm part of the ARMC team. Very proud to be speaking to you today on behalf of our team and as moderator. So I would like to introduce our wonderful guests who have joined us today, Sizo, Juan, and Naima. Welcome to this session where we will be talking about building a sustainable music career. And so this is a super important session, and it's such a fitting title and session to kickstart our edition of these workshops, these online workshops. And so before we get into the session and before we start to unpack some of your questions, which you've sent around in our survey, thank you so much for sending those. I'd love us to do a round of introductions with our esteemed speakers. And I will start with Naima, ladies first.
Thank you, SJ. Hi, everybody. Such a delight to be part of the panel today. My name is Naima. I'm a singer-songwriter, DJ, all-around creative, as I like to think of myself. And I'm originally from Zambia, but I'm based in South Africa.
Sorry about that. I was just muted. So, Sizo, let's go on to you. Welcome.
Cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Sizo Shope. I'm from Eswatini, and I'm a record label owner and a cultural producer in Eswatini. I run Antidote Music and Antidote Culture Foundation, which is an NGO. So thank you to meet you guys.
Welcome. So we have a wonderful artist, Naima. We've got an entrepreneur, music entrepreneur, label owner. And now we're moving over to Juan. Juan, welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, SJ. My name is Juan. I come from Bogota, Colombia. I've been living in Berlin for the past 4 years, and I'm currently working at the Berlin office of Paradise Worldwide, focusing on publishing affairs and cooperations between Germany, Colombia, and South Africa via conferences, private institutions, and the public sector as well. Thank you for having me, SJ.
Brilliant. And welcome to all of our guests today. I have looked at our attendees. We have various countries. We have various expertise in the room. So from artists to labels, to bookers, to festivals. So we're really excited to talk to you today and really unpack some of those questions that you've sent through. And so thank you so much for Bushfire, for the cooperation, and let's get into our discussion. So, Juan, I have a question for you as a publisher, distributor. We're talking today about how to build a sustainable music career. And one of the questions that was asked a couple of times actually is how to choose the right partner for your distribution and publishing. And of course, we know partnerships are everything within this business. And so perhaps you could take us through one or two nuggets of knowledge of how to choose the right partnership when it comes to a publisher or a distributor.
Okay, thank you, SJ. I would consider the personalized attention aspect of the business to be one of the most essential ones. This means you want the company to know what you're after, what your music sounds like, what your history has been like, what your talents are, what your network looks like. Sometimes when processes are digitally automated and are too dry, it is very difficult to understand what the other person is capable of. So for example, when looking at a distributor, you want the distributor to answer your emails on time. You want the distributor to follow up on your releases. And of course, this is a two-sided dynamic, no? You have to be very active as a musician or as a label. You have to be regularly pumping in different kinds of contents into the different pipelines that are in the market, no? Whether this be digital distribution, whether it be live shows, for example, which are publishing-wise very interesting. You want personalized attention. When I offer publishing services to my clients, I'm always wanting to understand what their potential talents are, because this could foster the relationship from both sides. For example, if I know there's a writer who is extremely talented in writing metal songs and songs for children, then I'm able to connect this person within these two realms. But if I do not know anything about this person and I'm just using data, there is not going to be a very nurturing relationship between both parties. So to answer your question, what would I consider to be the most important aspect when looking for a publisher and a distributor? It would be the personalized attention.
Brilliant. Thanks, Juan. And yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. Long-term relationships are always based on good people, right? And aligning of those ambitions and supporting one another for long-term growth. And so, Naima, I want to move towards yourself. As an artist, I understand that it can be difficult sometimes to find those partners, find the right people. And so I wanted to ask you, from an artist perspective, how do you go about developing your connection capital and finding the right people to bring into your ecosystem?
Thank you, SJ. I think you're right. It is quite a difficult task to manage everything in terms of finding the right people and also focusing on making the right art. So I think you need to leverage, as an artist, speaking from my experience, leveraging on collaboration and also on the different platforms and the resources that are available. You know, there's people like yourself with conferences, music workshops like the one we're having right now. There's organizations like the SAMRO organization, the South African Music Rights Collecting Organization. They usually have networks of people who are readily available to, you know, connect to artists and advise where you would need advice, collaborate where you would need collaboration. There's different things like songwriting camps that happen regularly. So I think immersing yourself in the industry is very important as an artist, and leveraging on networking so that your opportunities for collaboration are much wider. And you've also got just a bigger network of people to reach, you know, from people in distribution, from different artists, from management, promoters, stylists, photographers, which collectively would also help you to, you know, develop your own brand identity and cultivate a brand as an artist.
Thank you, Naima. So if I'm hearing you correctly, I mean, we've gone from Juan talking about the personal relationships, really looking to find people that you can grow long-term with. And then from your perspective, you know, resource. So using various resources such as conferences, you know, we have Access, Visa for Music in Morocco, which I've just come back from. We have the likes of SAMRO or SAMPRA, who are these organizations. We have Bushfire, who's, you know, constantly cultivating new relationships. And so we have a massive resources that perhaps aren't available, or perhaps we don't know about. And so maybe what we'll do after this session is everyone, we can put together a couple of links which could help you to find the right relationships. And now I'd like to go to Caesar, because Caesar, I know you've been doing a lot of work with funding organizations. You've been quite successful. We know resource is always a problem, or at least an obstacle, let's say. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about the role that funding is playing in building your sustainable music career.
Thank you, SJ. I think for us, at the beginning of it all, we had to understand our context. We come from Eswatini, a country of 1.5 million people. And if you would think of the sustainability of any music career in the country, when you're dealing with a population of that size, you don't have a lot to work with. So now the idea of export comes in. How do you then take the music out of the country? And one of the key, I would say, strategies that we used was to look into bilateral agreements that the country has with other countries. What relationship does Eswatini have possibly with Germany? What relationship does Eswatini have with France? And then we look into organizations that work in those ecosystems, then we kind of start this conversation through this diplomatic, I would say, routes, and maybe directly as well. And then you use the diplomatic routes as a way to kind of make that relationship stronger with the cooperating partner from another country. So that in itself has been key for us, and it has brought a lot of resources into our ecosystem. And we've been able to post, I think you remember, SJ, we met your team in Amsterdam, and we were able to go to Amsterdam through some of these corporations that exist. We've actually been to Berlin as well, to your office. This is through some of these corporations that exist. So I think leveraging on these corporation offices that exist within the continent and within our countries, that kind of helps in growing our ecosystems.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sizo. Sorry, if we could just mute that. So I mean, it's so important to leverage these funding opportunities. I think, you know, what you're doing is super inspiring, you know, to travel offshore and working not only in the European ecosystem, but with the worldwide ecosystem. It's just so important to, you know, really get over, not only have the conversations, but get yourself over. You know, Jigs of Bushfire was also traveling, you know, he goes to Canada and Europe, and he's all over, and, you know, he's building up this worldwide ecosystem in order for us within this circle to not only have access to acts, but also access to resources and knowledge offshore. And I think what's very important in talking about this and talking to all of you as independents is building a sustainable career is often about being independent, right? Because you're not waiting for someone to give you the opportunity, give you the funds. At least nowadays, we're looking to ourselves to create that opportunity. So Juan, maybe you could tell us a little bit about what it means to be independent and your perspective on independence from not only a publishing or distribution perspective, but as you know, you've got an artistic background coming from Colombia, an emerging market. Tell us a little bit about independence and what it means to you.
I mean, being independent as an artist is mainly about having total control of the content that you create. This means an independent artist will compose his or her own music, create the team to record it, to rehearse it, to mix it, to master it, you know, to own the master recordings and the compositions, which at the end will be monetized through different fronts. Digital distribution, radio, television, sync, for example. And the importance of being independent is that you come to understand all of these fronts that are essential for creating, like, let's call them the music rituals around the world, no? Listening to music as recorded music, listening to music in concerts, you know, in cafes. All of this is monetizable. And when you are independent, you are owning your rights completely. You decide what's going to happen with this. So I consider independence also to be a very important movement. I mean, seen in general in order to drive cultural change, because independent artists have to work with the people who care about their music. No, it's not about gambling. No, it's about thinking thoroughly about a product that you're going to release out to the world, and then you're going to build a community out of it. Do you want to have fun? Yes, I do. Then please come to my concert. It's a ritual, it's a party. People go to the concert, enjoy it, talk to you, understand what's going on. So this is the magic of independence from my point of view. It's ownership, it's decision-making, and it's growing a business essentially as well.
Thank you, Juan. That's super, super inspiring, and I couldn't agree more. I'm gonna move over to you, Naima, as an independent female. I want to ask you, what are some of the struggles that you see most with being independent, and how have you worked solutions around those struggles?
Thanks, SJ. Some of the struggles I would say I think are very common amongst, doesn't matter whether you're a female or a male artist. As an independent artist, you are kind of limited to the amount of resources that you're exposed to or that you have at your disposal. One of those resources is the financial resource. I think the financial aspect as an independent artist really comes into play. So you have to be creative in ways, in the way that you know, from the production, from the creation process of making your music, to the marketing, to even just your image as a brand and cultivating your image, to putting yourself out there, organizing your own shows, or even trying to get onto other people's shows. So I think the struggle is generally, firstly, the biggest struggle is the financial aspect. But like you say, there are funding opportunities out there. There are people who invest in your brand. It doesn't matter if it's a financial investment or if it's community based, or if it's a network that they putting you into contact with a person who could, give you a song or give you a platform to market yourself. So I think as an independent artist and being female, you just have to be a little bit more creative in terms of how you package yourself. And yeah, other struggles I would say come into play when you have to do everything as an independent artist, when you have to be the creator, the marketer, the promoter, and also you have to be your own, basically like personal brand manager on top of being your own artist manager. It can get a little bit taxing on you as a person. Forget that you're an artist, but just as being a person, it can be a bit taxing mentally, emotionally, physically. So there are ways that you need to manage yourself as a person. Yes, you're an artist, you're creative, you have to show up and look a certain way, perform a certain way. But you also have to be realistic in terms of what you're able to do and how much you do. And also just not be afraid to ask for help, because there are people who are willing to help you, and there are people who are willing to, give an extra hand where you need it. But most of it really starts with you and putting in the work and, getting those resources out and, just showing up at every level that you need to as an independent artist.
Exactly. And I think that harks back, Naima, thank you so much. It harks back to the relationship building and finding the right people, right? Because when you're down and, you're mentally perhaps just drained, if you have the right people around you, harking also back to what Juan said, who care about your music, who care about you as a person, who don't see you as, just this object that they're having to sell. And well, if they're not making money off you, they just have another 100 that hopefully they're gambling on, as you say, Juan. Then you have the support structure, right? You can lean on those people, not only for business advice, but you could also lean on them as a human being for structure and for support. And so I know here there are some, before I go on to the next question, I know people are writing in the group chat, and I don't want you to feel like we're ignoring you. So I'm just going to quickly tap in, and please feel free to write. This is we want to open up a Q&A at the end, but if you have anything that you'd love to ask or any ideas that come to mind, please feel free to add it in the chat. I see Tabiso says here, I think one of the challenges in handling all roles, say publishing or distribution or marketing campaigns, is negotiating. It takes away from the creative juice from the art. Thank you for that, Tabiso. And I can understand how it can be quite, distractive, the negotiation process. And of course, that's perhaps where you can lean on a team. So let's go over to you, Cizo, and talk about, the balance between art in building a career and, maybe from the label side, choosing the right music, A&R, and then the balance of actually, budgeting, deal structuring, and finding the happy medium. How do you work with and resolve those obstacles?
For me and my team, I think at the beginning of it all, it was just how our team is composed. We share different skill sets, and with those different skill sets comes the different roles that exist within the value chain of music. Most of the work that we do starts with the development of the artists. We don't work with well-established artists, so we develop them from grassroots until we break them. So in a way, we need to be patient with the artists. We need to work with them. when they are very doubtful of the music that they are putting together. So within ourselves, within the team, we need to, have this connection with the artists where we see them as humans beyond being just artists. And then on top of that, then we start to get on the business side once we start to release the music, and then we kind of make them understand what a contract is, what a split sheet is. When they bring collaborators into our studio, everyone has to sign on something just for their contribution on the song, so that we eliminate in the future some of the problems that may arise. A lot of problems in the music industry come because of contracts that were never signed or agreements that were breached. So when we get the artists to get an understanding of what a contract is, they get to have, I would say, a grip of their career, and then we try to instill a self-management ethos within our artists, so that they're able to get to run their channels online. They see their stats, and then when we get to manage them, they know exactly what we're doing, so that when we have to propose them for stages or anything, they know that they belong in those particular stages, and they know the kind of deals that are happening within those platforms. So I think the relationship that we have with artists is almost personal more than business, which to a certain extent, they feel like family to us, So yeah, I think that's pretty much our strategy.
Thanks, Es. And I think something that I'm hearing there is transparency from the very get-go, negotiating those contracts, getting them out of the way, developing a two-way communication where it's not just, so often you see artists receiving contracts, signing within 5 minutes, signed, send it over, no questions. Have you experienced that? And is that something that you take a step towards making sure that they understand? How do you approach that?
I mean, with us, with the contracts that the artists have signed, we've sat down with them, and then they read through the contract, and then they come back with questions, and then we kind of explain we explain the contract to them. And then one key thing is to try to understand some of the key components that they need to find in a contract, and some of these things need to be standard. I mean, if you go from one label to the other, some of these things are standard. They need to understand all of those things.
So, I'm going to hark back to our topic today, which is building a sustainable music career, and something about contracts, which we often see in the music business and artist approaches, is that, I want to have a major deal. I want to sign to a major, Sony, Universal, Warner, and all due respect to these pioneering labels, there are often deal structures from the major system that aren't feeding our sustainable ecosystem. And so I wanted to ask Juan you a question about the concept of advances, the concept of looking to sign to a major versus being independent, and the pros and cons of each relating to having a sustainable career.
So, I mean, advances are usually incentives to get composers, like in the case of publishing, to get composers to sign deals. So this advance comes with a few compromises which musicians have to comply to in order to pay the advance back. What happens sometimes is that the advance is not fully recouped, and this has implications as the loss of rights, for example, and having somebody else exploit them. This means loss of independence. So I think the idea of the advance has also been romanticized through film, in a very old music industry in which being good means receiving the offer of an advance. Yeah, but one has to examine what is the value of one's music in a certain stage of your life. What potential does this have? Where do you intend to have this music broadcasted? You have to ask yourself these questions as an independent artist looking forward to creating a sustainable career, because this way you understand what you can maneuver with. No, so it's important to have a plan at least 1-2 years ahead. It's necessary to have content. There needs to be content in order for there to be sustainability and for there to be income. Yeah, and if an advance is to be paid, the terms of recoupment should be very thoroughly examined. No, the independent sector for sure can offer advances as well. I mean, advances are not only from the majors, but I think sometimes like romantic drives towards decision making as opposed to rational ones take over. No? And it's very important to be rational about these kind of things. If you are talking about sustainability, if you're talking about growth, if you're talking about long-term career in the music industry, and what's going to be monetized is the music that you create. So I think the advance itself is not a problem. It could be problematic if you lose your rights, if you fail to recoup, and it could be, and I think this happens because it's far too romanticized. It's like bait. It's used like bait usually. So no, I think from an independent point of view, it's better to work in cooperation with somebody who has a platform like a distributor or a publisher who won't take over your rights, because this is a very contemporary modality. It's important to get knowledge, exchange knowledge with us, you know, so that you can grow on a regular basis. This is my point of view on advances. And if advances are to be paid, for example, why not have an advance be paid to be used only on digital marketing? You know, these are models that we handle. So we will pay you in advance, but it will have a specific focus. It will be used to make your music even more valuable, to increase its reach to digital media, for example. This makes more sense, but the romantic idea of an advance, which will burn out eventually with no further results, I think it feels a bit sad, and it's also very sadly exploited, because it takes over this kind of part of the mind that takes decisions, which is the romantic mind. So this is my point of view.
Beautifully said, Juan. Thank you so much. Super interesting. I want to work towards, I know we're getting a couple more comments. Please feel free to keep them coming and I will get to them. But I wanted to continue the conversation, going off choosing the right partner. Cesar, your hand is up. Excuse me.
Yeah, it's fascinating you bring up the idea of advances, because I was having a conversation about them yesterday. And we came into the industry where, you know, a lot was autonomous, everything was digital, and there was not a lot of money that was being made, you know. And with us, we look at that concept and we're like, we cannot afford to give artists advances, you know, because it's hard to recoup as an independent label, to recoup advances. And I mean, the best we can do is look at avenues exist within the digital ecosystem on how to better monetize the music than to just give an upfront payment to an artist and you don't know how to recoup it.
Exactly, and that's a different approach. And of course, you know, a lot of labels are using other opportunities to create a value, whether it's network, whether it's showcasing, whether it's, as Juan said, looking at advances into services that are, you know, the asset is being further developed and creating more reach for the asset, i.e. the music, through digital ads and so on. Naima, I am super impressed by how you are working within the mental health space. You know, we've talked a lot about contracts, but I wanted to move a little bit towards building a sustainable career, but also keeping yourself sane. So what are some of the things that you do with all this pressure, with the, you know, building your independent career? What are some of the things that you're doing on a daily basis, or that you're conscious of, to keep yourself in a balanced state?
Thanks, SJ. I think we all need to keep our sanity, considering the times that we are living in. For some reason, the pressure is getting worse, as that meme goes. But for me personally, I think I just have to constantly remind myself that I am an independent artist, and therefore I can't compare myself I can't make any comparisons whatsoever to any other artists out there, independent or not. I have to remind myself to stick within my values and work within those. And sometimes the industry can push you to compromise on your values in certain aspects. You end up doing things that you might not want to do, go to spaces you might not want to be in, take on certain jobs or certain networks or connections that you're not really aligned with. So for me, it's a daily reminder that I am an independent artist and I am unique in my own way. So I have to honor that. And, you know, for me, music was never about the money. Yes, the money is beautiful to have. It's amazing to be famous and all that. But for me, that's just the cherry on top. I still get around, you know, doing what I love and working with people who share the same values as me and people who have the same vision as myself. So working in the mental health space, there are certain things that I do on a daily, like meditating, mental health checks. Like I ask myself genuinely how I'm feeling. You know, I've got a little questionnaire that I usually tick off, and it'll ask you like on a scale of 1 to 10 or a scale of smiley face to sad face, how are you feeling? So that's one of the things, one of the tools that I use is a mental health check. Another thing that I definitely leverage on is the support system and the support network I have with other artists, people like yourself, you know, people who have got a little bit more experience than me, and just seeking support where I need to, when I need to. Other things that I do for myself just to keep myself sane is to create. I think that's one of the biggest things that helps me to stay, you know, active in the music space, in the creative space, and to diversify. I would say having a mentality that music is the only thing that I'm made for is a mentality that would keep me stuck. So I've learned to diversify. As you know, like I've done DJing, I've done TV presenting, I've done hosting, event hosting, as much as club hosting and podcast hosting. So I've diversified in a lot of ways, and that's also increased my avenues to build a community, to earn an income, and to also market myself and my art and my work. And then therapy is a big thing for me. So I do see a therapist when I can afford to pay her. I think there's also different options for speaking to someone, like counselors. There's platforms like the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, SADAG. There's Lifeline, and most recently, a platform called Creative Minds Unveiled. So that one is specifically for mental health in the creative space. People should check it out. They're on Instagram, Creative Minds Unveiled. And yeah, so just seeking the help of a therapist, of a counselor, and whether it's on the phone, usually on the phone, it's easier because it's free, or actually hiring one and having one who you can call on, whether you're seeing them weekly or monthly or bi-weekly. It does definitely help to have someone to talk to.
Thanks, Naima. So, you know, we've gone from relationships to deal structures to understanding from you, Juan, how you are setting up your independent versus major structure relation to advances, and then full circle to mental health, resources across mental health. Yeah, Naima, maybe we could get those from you afterwards and we'll send them around to everyone. So I think there's two more things that I really wanted to discuss today. The one is about releasing consistently, and sort of this, you know, we see constantly online, you know, there's so much content all day, every day. I read an article the other day about the projection of Spotify and the releases per second, how many releases there would be. And it's like a crazy number per second, how many songs are released worldwide. And I'll send that article around to yourselves too. But you know, there's a massive pressure on artists. You know, the DSPs are looking towards, you know, consistency of content. And so I wanted to do a round across each of you, you as speakers, and share with us a little bit about your strategy relating to consistency of content releases, and what is important about consistency, but how are you keeping the balance, looking at, you know, budgets and signings and so on. And Cesar, I'd like to start with you.
Yeah, I think luckily for us this year, through external funding, we managed to build a studio. And to us, that was key because the cost of making a song before was very high for us. And that meant that each time we needed to go to a studio, we needed to plan ahead, we needed to, you know, put a budget forward for all of that. And then recently, when we built the studio, we always have our artists in the studio. They are always creating music. And from there, we just go over the music that they've created and we start to A&R from there. So it has become easier for us in that sense. And of course, we're in a country with very little people, which means the music that is being created is not enough. You know, when you, I mean, if you're going to pride yourself as a record label from Eswatini, people want to hear music from Eswatini on your record label. And then artists in Eswatini are not producing enough music. So the studio then come to circumvent that. And in a way, we've been able to keep up with the consistency of putting out music. And I think so far it's been really good. So I wouldn't say this is a strategy for anyone, but we were lucky enough, we were privileged enough to set up a studio. And I think for each and every artist, it's very important to have at least a bedroom studio where you can able to record vocals, or you can be able to produce some music from your bedroom studio. So I think that's very key.
Brilliant. Thank you, Cesar. So yeah, again, relating to independence, being able to have your own equipment, whether it's, you know, your mic and a laptop just to create top lines. Let's go to you, Juan.
I mean, I think there are many, many ways to get recognition or success in the music industry. That there are no magic formulas for this, you know, and particularly in a world in which every day, like, more people get to participate, which I think is a lovely thing, you know, like people to get to engage with music in many different ways. So I think creating content, of course, is essential. I mean, the sounding music, of course, but it's also creating the stories that accompany your music. You know, why does it make it valuable? Why does it make it special? Where is the essence? Where is it spiced? Why is it different to the other things? Why should people listen to it? And this comes together with working with a community, whether it be online or whether it be in person. I come from a tradition of jazz, rock, and electronic music, and it's very important to play the music live. You know, this is a celebration. You know, the people want to listen to the new songs. You know, because what we compose our songs, in many cases with text or without text, can also be, but people fall in love with the melodies. People fall in love with the texture. You know, people fall in love with the story that it's been recorded with mobile phones, for example. I mean, during Corona, I decided to compose a song with my band who were in Colombia and Malta. We did so using mobile phones, added some electronic aspects, and the song today, without investing one single cent in it, has 500,000 plays. Did I become a millionaire with this? No, of course not, but it did catch the attention of the press, and I think this is very, very important, no? to make a change in the way recording practices, creation practices are shaped, rethought about. This is very important. No, now if you're interested in like reshares, likes on TikTok, that is also fine. But then you have to think, what's the strategy? Why would people want to see this? You know, what makes it special? You know, so it's about finding the spice. It's knowing how to create a story. It's knowing how to articulate it to a given cultural context. You know, whether it be, I know, whatever it be, you know, whatever you can think about, but it's, you have to ask yourself these questions. You have to make a plan, and it's not always about funding. It's about with people and making content for people. So if people don't care, they're not going to consume it ever. But if people care, they're going to consume it. They're going to listen. They're going to share it. They're going to tell people that they know you. You know, but Does it demand a lot of effort? For sure. I mean, maybe more than many other average typical jobs. But this is the beauty of it. We do it because we need to do it.
Thanks, Juan. Such inspiring messages here. I'm really enjoying this. Naima, over to you.
Okay, on the notion of content, I would break it down in, I would say, two segments. So the first is obviously your music. And I think creating musical content, which is your assets, I think you should always think of it as your assets, should really come from a place of collaboration. Obviously, you have to be inspired. You shouldn't always just get into studio and, you know, make music just because you heard a song that sounds or that went viral and try to replicate or imitate that. I think you should always try and add something of your own uniqueness to your content, to your music. So one of the ways that I've found a nice way to always consistently have music is by collaborating. And I mean, I'm an example. This whole year, I haven't released a single song on my own, but I have done collaborations with other people early in the year, which they liked so much and they said they want to release it. So I've got music based off of collaborations. And one way to collaborate with other artists is through songwriting camps. And people think, oh, a songwriting camp, I don't know where a songwriting camp is happening, but it's so easy to get your own community of people, of artists together to create a songwriting camp. I think we all know a producer who either has a bedroom studio or an actual studio setup. And I think they always, every creative will find an opportunity to collaborate where they see value. So if you're an artist and you see, let's say you've got a producer friend or a producer who you've worked with, but you can't really afford at the moment, offer something of value, that you can exchange, a value exchange between you and the producer. Get some artists together and say, let's work on a songwriting camp where we do a compilation of music, but you've got content going. You know, you can set up a bedroom session with 5 artists and 1 producer, and that's a songwriting camp on its own. So I think overthinking it sometimes gets us stuck in a rut because we're stressed about looking for songwriting camps, you know, being organized by different labels or publishers or distributors, but you've got your network. And like Juan said, a lot of this is based off of community. So leverage on your community, build a community of artists, of songwriters, of producers, of mixing engineers, and get them together in one room and create content. Another way I've found a beautiful network to collaborate is social media. We find each other a lot on social media. I mean, a lot of people have found me. I've found a lot of people I've worked with via social media. And a simple DM does the work, you know, a simple DM. And I'm not saying they're going to respond right away, but you also have to be persistent. And one thing I would advise another artist listening is that your social media should reflect that you are a musician or that you are a creative in whatever space that you're doing. So that makes me go on to your social media content now. You've got to have enough content that draws people to you, that makes them interested in finding out what you do. Yes, it's nice to look cute and always post nice pictures and views and all that, but you also have to show your work, you know, and let people in on your story, why you're doing the work that you're doing. Take them on a little journey. You don't always have to post consistently, like every single day, 5 times a day, but you can schedule your content, you know, and that's the nice thing about improvements and innovations with technology right now is that you've got options for scheduling. So if you go onto Instagram and you don't have time, like I know a lot of artists work 9 to 5s and they don't have time to sit and post at whatever time that their audience is usually online. So go onto your insights, look at your analytics, get an idea of when your people are online the most. I mean, those analytics are readily available on your social media platforms, and schedule your content accordingly. So you can schedule your content for the week, you know, and it could be a little snippet of you singing, it could be your next release, it could be your outfit, it could be a get ready with me to go to the studio, it could be behind the scenes of your last session. And I've literally just mentioned things that you could post in the week and you could schedule them. And then utilizing social media, I think is where a lot of power is right now. And that is also something that I am trying to take on a little bit more, because I noticed that a lot of people are online. So if you're not online and you're not marketing your music, you don't have a big label backing you, then you're missing out on a readily available market that could easily become your next super fan. So yeah, leverage off of social media, post consistently, but also post relevantly, and don't be afraid to show the work that you're doing. I think a lot of artists overthink, you know, the perfectionist syndrome, I call it, every artist suffers from, and they think, no, it doesn't look perfect, I don't sound right, or I don't look right. Doesn't matter. I don't always look like this, and trust me, sometimes I post when we're just having woken up, and I still get the most views in those types of posts, because I think people want to connect with you as an artist, not just as the brand, but also as the person behind the brand. So yeah, don't be afraid to show off that side of you, the person who is behind the brand, and let people in on you as a person, what makes you the artist that you are, the person that you are, what makes you special, what makes you intriguing, because everybody, I think, that's in the creative space has something that makes them a little bit more unique than the next person. So leverage off of that too.
Thanks, Naima. So before we close, we have one final question. Any advice, this is from Narato, any advice on how we draft contracts and really just navigate contracts as an independent artist without a team? General question, but I will give it to Juan. Perhaps you could look at the distribution and publishing contract as an example.
I mean, the question is on how to navigate a contract, how to read a contract?
It's how to draft a contract.
How to draft a contract.
Yeah.
Okay. Definitely the internet offers a series of templates that you could use in order to, as guidelines, you know? So it can become it can be difficult, but it's not impossible as an independent. So the internet does for sure offer many guides. There are certain market standards which you can easily download on Google. I mean, downloading contracts or templates is not a problem at all. You have to make sure that it complies to the law of the territory in which you are. But nevertheless, having the possibility to compare between different territories is very insightful. But the essence is to know what you're putting on the table in exchange for what. That's the general principle of a contract, you know. I think in a world where people, you know, kept their word and so on, contracts would be absent. It wouldn't be a problem, you know. But given that it can get a bit nitty-gritty, the simpler it is, the better. So for example, a contract could be for splits, you know. So we record in a certain studio, how are we going to split anything that comes out of it? So performer A gets a share, performer B gets a share, the producer gets a share, the composer gets a share, and everything is pretty much stated on paper and everybody signs. So the simpler it is, the better, because it actually doesn't have to be like the most complicated extended version of an agreement. No, it's pretty simple terms that show that the people involved are giving something in exchange for something, and everybody who is responsible for giving and receiving has a series of responsibilities. So this is pretty much the essence of it. But if you want to see, like, if you want it to look a bit, let's say, more professional, you could download this from the internet as well. Just make sure you examine Reddit and groups like these are very useful in order to examine these terms, or reach out to a distributor or a publisher, ask them if they could send you a template of the contract. Why not? But what's important in a contract is that people understand what their responsibilities and obligations are. And once you have this, it is valid whenever there is any disputes to take over. This is what it's important. It doesn't have to be a very complicated thing. It's just knowing you give something, you ask for something in exchange. This is written down. If everybody signs and if it's been discussed, it shouldn't be a problem at all.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Juan. I know we're coming to the end of the session, and so I would like to just do a quick round of thank yous. Thank you to our speakers. I would hand over to each speaker now and give you one closing remark. Please keep it short and sweet. Advice to those executives from Eswatini, from South Africa, from around the world. One sentence of advice that we can leave them with here today. Over to you, Naima.
Thank you so much. This has been very insightful. I myself have learned a lot. I think my advice would just sum up a lot of the questions that we've received. There is one question that also asked about content and keeping it either just professional or also adding a personal touch to it. And my advice to that person is that you need to let people connect to you as a person and also the person behind the brand. Not just the creative or the asset or the products that are being sold. And yeah, keep your mental health, I think, a priority, because the pressure does get a little bit worse the more invested you become and the more independent you are as an artist. There is a lot of pressure for you to also deliver from a creative point of view, but also to show up and understand the business side of things. So always learn and be open to reaching out for assistance wherever you can, and learn the business. You know, I think we all get stressed about contracts and lawyers and all those things, and we forget small details like your performances and showing up for the shows and showing up for the fans and giving the fans a basically like a little binoculars into your own life and what you have to, you know, give to be the creative that you are. So yeah, just invest in your brand, but also in your personal self. So always put your mental health first. Take care of yourself. Your health is more important. I mean, if you're not okay, then nothing will work out. You're not going to show up for the show. You're not going to show up for the studio session. You won't even show up for that interview. And yeah, just use your connections, network as much as possible, leverage off of those networks to get to where you want to be, and without compromising on your own values.
Thank you, Naima. Over to you, Caesar. I think you're on mute.
Yes, sorry about that. I think for me, it's really about relationships. I mean, over the last year, we've been working with Paradise. I don't know how many times we've bent your arm, where you've done favors for us. So I think it's really important for the artists to have a relationship with their distributor. It's really important for a record label or whatever company that is putting out music to have a relationship with their distributor. And at a broader scale, it is important to build networks within the ecosystem. And it doesn't really matter if it's like musicians or if it's like painters or, you know, visual artists and, you know, podcasters, because they form part of this bigger creative industry ecosystem and they feed off each other. So I think it's really key to kind of make those personal connections with these people, and it then becomes easier for you to kind of link yourself with many contacts within their ecosystem as well. So yeah, that's me.
Thanks, Caesar. And Juan, in closing?
So my advice would be create musical content, set goals, set a strategy for reaching your goals, and set standards for measuring success. So I repeat them again. Create musical content, most important of all. then set goals, then set a strategy for reaching your goals, and then set standards for measuring success.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, MTN Bushfire. Thank you to all of the speakers and, of course, all of our participants. We've really enjoyed speaking to you today. Please don't forget to keep abreast of our social media platforms for our next sessions. Join those. We will be connecting everyone here. We're working on a solution in order to connect you. I did see some comments of how we could interconnect and create our own network and opportunity. And so that's something we will take in. We'll take in all the comments. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. And we're sending you lots of good vibes and great gratitude and love to everyone. Ciao.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Ciao, everyone.